Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to askNK. Blender 2.93, the beta is now here, and for anyone who would like to get this, you can simply go over to blender.org, go to downloads and go all the way down to where you get to see the Blender experimental, and right here you would notice that we have the Blender 2.93, the beta. Now there are a couple of things that will be making it to Blender 2.93, and of course there's a couple of things that we are not yet sure if they will be making it to Blender 2.93, but I would simply advise you to download these things and play with them, and so you can report bugs to the folks at Blender Foundation just in case there are several bug fixes that needs to be done. And for anyone who would like to follow up with the roadmap, you want to see when Blender is going to be available, you want to see certain stages that they are right now, as they actually jumped out of beacon 3. Right now it's just going to be more of bug fixes than feature updates. And with that said, let's take a look at some of the features and some of the cool things that will probably be making it to Blender 2.93. So with Blender 2.93, the beta open right here, you would notice that we have a brand new splash screen, and this is made possible by Erindale. He's an amazing CG artist. I'm going to put a link in the description that'll take you over to his Gumroad so that you can see some of the cool things that he has. So with this said, if we go right into the Blender viewport, you would notice that there is literally nothing new. The only set of new things that you can notice is the new things that we've covered for the previous weeks. But then if you look very closely, you would also notice that there is a brand new tab right here. So the geometry node now has its own dedicated section, so you can now click right here to jump over there. So if you're kind of contemplating maybe this existed in 2.92, of course it doesn't. So if we open up Blender 2.92 right now, you would notice that we don't have that. But of course the geometry node was there in 2.92, but in 2.93 it simply means that this is definitely something that will be coming. And when we talk about things that will be coming to 2.92, of course you can notice that we have the spreadsheet right there, we have the geometry sheet or the geometry layout, we have that right here, but we don't have something lots of you guys have been asking for. And I don't know if this is going to be coming or not, but within the documentation there is something that looks like that. But right here within the UI you would not be able to see the asset browser. So hopefully the asset browser is going to be coming with the the release of Blender 2.93, but right now I have no idea about that. So we're just simply going to keep our fingers crossed and believe that folks at Blender Foundation will do something about that one. So with that said, if you would also want to play with the geometry node, of course we've already talked about a lot of things that come with the geometry node. You can simply go ahead and take a look at these things and see how you can get the most out of it. Meanwhile, the folks at Blender Foundation did a little update to the UI, and that has to do with this section. So right here you can see that we have this preset viewpoint. All right, so this stuff is what you use to rotate around your viewport. There is a tiny update that has been done to that. So if we bring out Blender 2.92 and actually stack these two side by side, all right, so you can see that right there. So that's a cool update that will be coming with this. And for the modeling, I don't really see a lot of modeling, set of tools that will be coming, and that leaves us with sculpting. So for the sculpting, Pablo Dubaro did show up a couple of things. So we've talked about a couple of things that Pablo Dubaro has teased, but there are just a handful of things that will be coming with the final version of Blender. I mean, if the beta stuff is not going to include any new features, then it simply means that we will probably be seeing only about 4 or 5 features that might be coming to Blender 2.93. So we can choose to go over to where we have the Sculpt mode, and within the Sculpt mode, of course, you would notice that we don't have any of this stuff. All right, so right now, I guess this is like the early beta, so some of these things are not going to be available. So in case you download this stuff and you notice this isn't the problem from you. It's just a minor problem that the folks at Blender Foundation would fix. Something else which is also quite minor that I did notice is if you click on the file and you go right over to where you have new, you'll notice you only see the general, and those things are not there. All right, so if you go over to 2.92 and you click, and you can see all of these ones, and this just simply makes more sense. So maybe these things are going to be fixed, and hopefully they will be. So with that said, let's proceed with the other features that will be coming to Blender 2.92. So Pablo Dubaro did tease something that looks pretty cool, and this is the Sculpt Expand. So we talked about the Sculpt Expand, we looked at several ways that you can work with these things and how you can create the most out of this, and it's quite interesting to see that the Sculpt Expand will be coming to Blender 2.93. So we've looked at this one, we've done a full video about this. I'm going to put a link in the description, so just in case you want to see this thing, you want to see how it works, this is definitely going to be quite impressive. So I'm just going to let this one be right there, and with this you can scroll all the way down. I mean, if you get to find all of these icons, all right, so you can scroll all the way down, and I guess that should be right around here. So let's get to find out the mesh filter. So with the mesh filter, you can actually use the mesh filter right now and start doing some very interesting looking pattern designs by simply using the Sculpt Expand. So the Sculpt Expand gives you more opportunities of things that you can work with, and it doesn't just limit you with just things like this. You can also use the Sculpt Expand. So let's undo this. You can also use the Sculpt Expand alongside your cloth filter. So by default, if you hit Shift and A on the keyboard and you drag out, if you tap W on your keyboard, you can make a couple of ripples, and you can also choose to tap E to preserve those ones, and you can also choose, to tap R to get some recursion steps where you're working with this. So right now you can see this very lovely recursion steps, and if we just go back and tap F on the keyboard, we can choose to invert this, and if we don't want to invert this, we can tap F one more time to revert this thing back to what it was before. So let's just believe that we have this one right here, right? So we just believe that we have it here. You can now look for the cloth filter, and you can use the cloth filter to do some very interesting things. Press F on your keyboard, scale this all the way up, click right here, get the expand, or you can get the inflate, and you can use this to actually inflate your geometries, and you can see some very nice patterns that you've started making. So you can use these things now to start making some very beautiful looking stuff. And for those who are interested in things like this would definitely come in very, very handy. And when we talk about things that will be coming in very, very handy, the animation and rigging tools, they do have a couple of updates to them. So I'm going to put links in the description so that you can take a look at that. And with that said, there is also a very cool set of updates that is right here for Grease Pencil. So I think this particular release is kind of more targeted for Grease Pencil and also the geometry node than any other part of Blender. So for the Grease Pencil, we now have the import and export of grease pencils to PDF, and we also have some very cool tools like the fill tool, which you can use to fill several parts of your object. We also have like the auto feed, and as well we have the interpolate tool. And for those who are thinking about modifiers, we've already talked about a couple of these modifiers. There is a pretty nice noise modifier that you can now use directly in Blender 2.93 once you start working with it, and you can use to make some pretty cool visuals for yourself. And when we talk about the things that we can use to make some pretty cool visuals, we've already talked about the fact that Eevee is also having a kind of update within this period. So the depth of field has a very good implementation for Eevee, and there is also some very cool fixes for ambient occlusion. So the ambient occlusion has been completely rewritten. So whenever you're doing your rendering and you go over to your Eevee section, so I'm just going to switch these over to Eevee, and you turn on your ambient occlusion, you'll be getting even way better result. Meanwhile, Volumetrics has also gotten a little bit of a face-off. So for example, right here, we do have a volumetric object. So if we tap Z on the keyboard and switch over to render, we can now get this thing to start rendering directly in Eevee. And we've already done a video about this one and how you can get the most out of it, and how you can do these things is by simply going over to the volumetric section and turning on the volumetric shadow. So with the volumetric shadow right there, you can play with how much samples you want, and you can also choose to play with the tile sizes to get even way cleaner result right here in Eevee. So with this said, there is also some very cool improvements to some other materials that also exist in Eevee in terms of glass and reflection, and these are very nice updates for Eevee. And when we talk about updates that are available for Eevee, Cycles is not left out. Cycles now have a nice subsurface scattering update that is now here. There's also the Open Color IO update that is now available for Cycles. And for those who like to work with things like area light, you want to control how this thing spread, we've already done a separate video about that one. So I'm just going to put links in the description that can take you over to the playlist. So I'm just going to show you guys the playlist right now. So it takes you over to the playlist where you can see our Blender weekly updates, and it covers all of the potential updates that have been happening in Blender since 2019 all the way to this time. And if you go right there and you take a look at the brand new asset tools, or maybe the complementary tools, you will definitely find some of those updates, and you probably will get up and running with these things. And while we look at the updates that are up and running, there's a lot more updates coming over to the geometry node than any other part of Blender. A couple of new nodes that are now here include the attribute proximity, the volume to mesh, the points to volume, and also the mesh primitive node. And to test these things out, if you grab a brand new scene and you drag this all the way up, switch from here, go over to where you have your geometry node, you can just simply select this geometry, click right here, have a brand new geometry node, and you can type in some very cool stuff. So if we type in the word like cone, for example, so let's just go ahead and get a simple cone. You would notice that we have a cone here, and I can connect this cone right here, and I can actually disconnect this one and just have this cone. And it also makes sense to, bring to light that the boolean, right, the boolean is also here. So this is also a very cool one for anyone who would like to play with the geometry node. The boolean is also something that is pretty nice to see, and you can go ahead and do some of this very interesting and creative things with the geometry node. So the geometry node has come a long way, and it's very cool to see that the folks at Blender Foundation are actually making this stay and also making it even better than it used to be. So if you want to read up on some of these things that we've already talked about, or maybe you want to see some of the clips, or maybe see some of the walkthroughs, I'm going to put links in the description where you can check them out. This is some of the updates that will probably, or some of the features that will probably be coming over to Blender. For VFX and video, there's some updates to motion tracking, compositor, sequencer, and as well, the library override does have some couple of updates coming to it. But I did notice that if you go over to where you have the references for the release notes and you click on the pipeline and assets, this is going to pop you right over here where you have the asset browser. So at this point, I'm a bit confused if asset browser is coming or if it is not going to be coming. And of course, I do know that this is, this is like the very first beta version that is being released. So hopefully this will be making it to Blender 2.93. And of course, we've already checked this one out here, and the asset browser doesn't seem to exist. So hopefully this is going to be showing up. Blender 2.93, the beta, is available right now. Link is going to be in the description so that you can grab it and start working with it. Report as much bugs as you can. Test so many features out. Test so many things out. Tell me what you guys think about this in the comment section. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss next video or the next update. And I'd like see you guys again with a tutorial update. Free Friday, tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.